Don't be April fooled with these scams. The first scheme is called a pyramid scheme. Pyramid schemes are scams that require a constant flow of money to keep going. Here's how they work. One person who comes up with the idea says, hey, you three people each give me $1,000. And for the privilege of giving me $1,000, each one of you can go find three people to give you $1,000. That way you gave me $1,000, but you got $3,000, so you made $2,000 overall. Sounds like a good deal, right? The problem with this is that there's no goods or services being sold, and your profit is completely reliable on how many people you can trick into giving you money for nothing. They're sometimes called Ponzi schemes after Mr. Ponzi, who developed this in the early 1900s. Mr. Ponzi tried to do a legitimate business. He was going to be moving these money checks around, and he thought he could make a good deal of money on it. However, he did not make very much money at all. Instead of going to his investors and telling them, I'm sorry, my business plan failed, he just got more investors. And the new investors gave all their money unknowingly to the old investors. And so the original investors thought that they made a good deal of money off this business. So more people invested. Well, now how do I pay off the second round of investors? Yet a third round of investors. The problem with Mr. Ponzi's scheme was that every round of investors had to be bigger and raise more money than the first round of investors. That's why it's sometimes called a pyramid scheme. You start at the top, and as you work your way down, you have to get more and more and more people involved, giving you money for nothing to pay off the original people. Eventually, Mr. Ponzi just could not get enough money, could not get enough people to give him money, and a round of investors didn't get any money back. They had paid in, and they got nothing back. This is, of course, completely illegal, but there is a somewhat legal way of getting around that. That's called a multi-level marketing scam. It's not really a scam, it's just a really, really bad idea. A multi-level marketing company says that the sales force has to pay to buy the product themselves, and then they will sell their product that they own to other people. This actually works okay if the product is a good product that people want to buy. Things like Mary Kay and Avon sometimes work that way, where the salespeople buy the product and then they sell the product themselves. But the problem is, usually these multi-level marketing schemes don't have good products. See, if they had good products, they could sell directly to the consumers and not to their own sales force. Guys, if anyone asks for money for the privilege of working for them, say no. The bosses are supposed to pay the employees, not the other way around. Bernie Madoff, a New York City money manager, was arrested in 2008 and convicted of running the biggest pyramid scheme in history. He had a $65 billion scam going on, where he had taken that money from many famous people, big names that you would know. Almost every rich person in America had at least some of their money invested in Mr. Madoff's investment plans. However, he wasn't investing any money. He was just moving it around from investor to investor, and of course, keeping most of it for himself. And when he was arrested, many people lost all their money. Hardly any of that money was found and given back to the people. Mr. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison in the year 2008, which means that he will get out in the year 2158. So just a few more years to go. The second scheme I'd like to talk to you today is called the Nigerian Prince Scheme. Maybe you've heard about it before. This was really common in the early days of the internet. Someone sends you an email and says, hello, my name is so-and-so. I am a prince of Nigeria. I'm very, very rich, but I'm in trouble for whatever reason. And he makes up an excuse. Maybe he's in jail and needs to post bond. Maybe he had a bank account frozen on him. Well, anyway, he says, if you give me a little bit of money, only a few hundred or a few $1,000s, then I'll have access to my $1 million fortune, millions and millions, and I'll give you 10 times what you invest in me. So just give me money and I promise to give you more money later. Of course, you give them the money and you never hear from them again. This is actually a very old scam. In the 1800s, they called it the Spanish prisoner. And you would get a letter in the mail saying, "Help! I'm a prisoner in Spain." This would have been an English scam where we hate the Spaniards, and oh no, I'm an innocent prisoner in Spain. But if you give me X amount of cash, then I can bribe the guards to let me escape, and then I'll come home and I'm rich, so I'll give you a huge reward. So please give me all your money. This is actually even older than the Spanish prisoner. There's been time immemorial, there have been different scams of saying, give me a little bit of money and I'll give you more money later. And of course, they never do. Our next scam is called phishing with a PH, or catfishing, also with a PH. This is a little bit more modern. This is when you pretend to be someone that you're not online. Phishing, it tends to be a little more passive, where there are websites that are set up to look like things they are not. For instance, a fake bank account website. Let's say your bank account is First National. Well, they will set up a bank account called firstnational.com, but this website misspells it by one letter. Maybe it spells first with a U, or just something very similar like that. So if you accidentally put in the wrong web address, you go to their bank account and they make sure that their website looks exactly like the real website. So you put in your username and password and they record that. And of course, they don't have any access to your money until you give them your username and password. Sometimes phishing works by them sending you an email pretending to be the IRS or someone else and saying, can you send your information to this email address? And of course you do, because you think it's legitimate. It looks legitimate. They have the right logos on their emails and everything, but then they just took all of your information. Very famously in 2013, Notre Dame footballer Manti Te'o told the news that his girlfriend had died of leukemia, and it was really sad, and that was giving him the strength to keep on playing. And it was all in the news until he found out that his girlfriend actually wasn't a real person. He had never met her in person, just talked to her on the phone and emailed and texted back and forth. And shortly after telling the news that this sob story that his girlfriend died very tragically, the catfisher told him, well, actually, this is all just fake. It was just some jerk trying to mess with him. And that went in the news. It was very, very sad. This is why we don't date online, people. Next up are lottery and other prize scams. In this scam, someone knocks on your door or calls you or emails you and says, congratulations, you've just won this prize. And of course you haven't. And all you need to do to claim this prize is give me your information, bank account, social security, whatever. And it seems really legitimate. Hey, you just won $1 million, so give me your bank account number and I'll deposit it in there, huh? And of course, it's completely fake. And this, again, is a very, very old scam, much older than the internet. In this scam, people claim that you've won a prize, and either they ask for your information or sometimes they ask for a fee. Give me a $30 processing fee and I'll win. One scam I remember from the early days of the internet is you've won an iPhone. There would be advertisements everywhere saying, click here, you've won a free iPhone. And of course, if you do, all sorts of bad things happen. Your computer crashes, you get a virus, Trojan horse, something like that. Really terrible. Don't believe all the good news that you've heard. One time that I was almost taken in was this summer. I was called by Hilton Hotels, and this was actually legitimate. It was the Hilton Hotels. They said, you've gotten a free week in Cancun, and it's free. And I was really excited. So I was talking to this lady trying to get my free week in a resort in Mexico. The more I talked to her, the more expensive this free week of vacation was going to be. First, they said, well, you're responsible for your own plane tickets. And I almost hung up right then and there, because from Maine to Cancun was over $1,000. The lady said, no, it'll just be a couple $100 for a plane ticket. I said, really? So I put her on speaker and yeah, the plane tickets from Portland to Cancun were about $1,300. And she promised to help me find cheaper tickets, but I wasn't going to believe her. And then the more we talked, the more things that she was requiring me to pay. In fact, she wanted me to give her $150 on the phone right then just to secure my week. I don't know. It was really weird. And the more I talked to her, the more fees there were. This was an example, not quite of a scam, but definitely of something that's way too good to be true. Next scam is a charity scam. And this is really sad because it preys on your compassion And it gets even worse in times of great need, like during an epidemic or during some kind of natural disaster, a hurricane or an earthquake. People ask for money to help people and then they don't spend it on them. Sometimes there's just a fake charity where all the money that is sent to that charity is just pocketed by a bad person. Sometimes there are real charities that have really awful practices. There's not all that much oversight in America of charities. And quite often, there are charities that pay their leaders hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or even more. There have been reports in the news of some charities where the workers there get over $1 million a year. There's been other reports of charities that spend more money on advertising than on actually giving money to the people that they say they will. There was one report of someone, this charity, a very well-known charity, only spent about 10% of the money that they brought in on actual charitable work, and the other 90% was going to mailing and other marketing things, and then just paying all their people. Very sad. And the last scam that we have today is just plain old simple investment fraud, where someone lies and says that their company is more valuable than it really is, takes all your money, and leaves you in the dust. One great example of this is Enron. At Enron's peak, its shares were worth $90.75 each. But when the scandal developed, its shares plummeted down to 26 cents each, from almost $100 to about a quarter each. And this happened almost overnight. Some people had millions of dollars worth of Enron stocks that are all of a sudden worth 20 bucks instead of several $1 million. See, the thing with Enron is that they said that they were doing just fine. They said that they were one of the most profitable companies in the world, by far the most profitable company in America. In 2001, they reported that they had earned over $100 billion that year. Just to put that in perspective, Microsoft made $20 billion that year. And Microsoft had more employees than Enron did. So if a really decent, really good company like Microsoft makes 20 billion bucks and Enron makes 100 billion bucks, what is going on there? It must be the best company in the world. Buy all their stocks. Well, it turns out that they had just been lying for years. They had been losing money, not making any money at all, but they had just been lying. And of course, when that came out, many people were thrown in jail. But that doesn't get your money back, unfortunately. Another example of this is Theranos. Look up the story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. It is quite fascinating. This lady went out and told everyone that she had invented the most revolutionary medical device ever. It was a home blood testing kit where you just get a tiny little prick of blood, and it can do over 150 different procedures and tests on that one prick of blood. Things that you would normally have to go into the doctors and give several vials of blood and pay thousands and thousands of dollars for these blood tests. She said, buy my couple $100 piece of equipment and it will do 150 different tests for you and it will save millions of lives. Again, way too good to be true. She kept on saying that it's still in research and development phase, but it's almost ready. And she was such a persuasive public speaker that she got everyone hooked, and people gave her millions of dollars. She raised over $700 million without actually proving that her device worked even once. At one point, her company was valued at $9 billion before they had sold anything. They got a good deal, I think it was with CVS or one of those drugstores, where they were going to sell their device in their stores. And yet their device couldn't do a single test, much less 150 different tests. And of course, when that came out, anyone who had bought stock, they got nothing. The company was shut down. So if you had invested in it, you lost all your investments. This took lots and lots of very public figures in. People like Tom Cruise had invested tens of thousands or millions of dollars in Theranos, and it was a complete scam. So how can you make sure that you are not being April Fooled? Well, some of these it's very difficult to do. You cannot personally look at the books of Enron and discover if they're lying or not. You can't tell if Elizabeth Holmes' crazy cool device is going to work or not. But here are a few tips. Number one, Make absolutely sure that you know who you are giving your information to. Never give away your information just because someone asks for it. In this internet age, people are getting very lax, very lazy with giving out their information to anyone who asks for it. Be very, very careful. Never give out your information over the phone or in reply to an email, especially if you are not expecting that email. If there is a person that you're not sure if they really are who they say they are, you contact them instead. For instance, if you get an email from your bank asking you for some information and you're not sure if it's legit, go to the actual bank, talk to them, or even email the actual bank's email address and say, hey, did you send me this email? If someone calls you and says, I'm from the IRS, you have to give me your information. First of all, say, well, no, thank you, I'll get back to you. Then you call the IRS phone number and say, hey, did you call me? Do you need this information? You go to the legit sites just to make sure. If there's someone who is peddling something that is too good to be true, it usually is simply too good to be true. There is no legitimate get rich quick scheme. Some of these schemes actually work though. A pyramid scheme works for the people who get in on it quick enough, but not anyone else. So you have to decide, well, first of all, am I in early enough to make money off of this? And second of all, do I want to make money by scamming other people, my friends and relatives? Probably not. Be careful with your information. Protect it like you would cash. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Happy April Fools.